human remains found in Montgomery County earlier this month have been confirmed as those of Felicia Johnson.
She's the 24-year-old San Diego woman who disappeared while visiting Houston.
What happens when a simple ride turns into a nightmare? Imagine this. A young woman, full of dreams and ready to take on the world, disappears without a trace during what was supposed to be a celebration of her life. This isn't fiction. It's the chilling story of Felicia Johnson, a 24-year-old from San Diego who traveled to Houston with big plans for her future. But instead of coming home with new opportunities, she left behind only unanswered questions and a trail of horror. Felicia wasn't just any name in the crowd. She was a daughter, a sister, a dreamer. She had hopes of becoming a model, someone who could inspire others. Her family cheered her on every step of the way. So why did her journey end so tragically? What dark secrets lie hidden in the days leading up to her disappearance? And then there's this, her phone, covered in blood, found abandoned near Bear Creek Park. Who left it there? Why? Was it a warning, a mistake, or something far more sinister? This is more than just a missing person case. It's a mystery that shakes you to your core. Because if something like this can happen to Felicia, it can happen to Felicia. It can happen to anyone. Stay with us as we dive deep into the heartbreaking details of what really happened that night and why justice still feels so far away. Welcome to Fatal Fame, where all our stories are based on true crimes. Please support us by subscribing to this channel and clicking the notification bell icon so you don't miss any of our latest stories. Imagine this. A young woman full of life, dreams, and so much potential decides to take a trip that she hopes will change her life for the better. That's Felicia Johnson. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. Someone's sister, someone's friend. Born and raised in San Diego, California, Felicia grew up surrounded by love. Her parents, Kelvin Johnson and Lee Smith, always made sure she knew how special she was, and she was special. She was the oldest of 3 kids, the one everyone looked up to, the one who had big plans for her future. Felicia had dreams, big ones. She wanted to be a model. You know how some people talk about their dreams but never really chase them. That wasn't Felicia. She had the looks, sure, but more than that, she had the drive and determination to make it happen. She worked hard, stayed focused, and believed in herself even when things got tough. Her family, they were her biggest cheerleaders. They cheered her on every step of the way because they knew how much this meant to her. For Felicia, modeling wasn't just about fame or glamour. It was about proving to herself that she could do anything she set her mind to. Doesn't that sound like someone you'd root for too? Now, here's where the story takes a turn. In April 2022, Felicia decided to visit Houston, Texas. Why Houston? Well, think about it. She was celebrating her 24th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than to explore new opportunities? She thought Houston might be the place where her dreams could finally start coming true. Maybe she'd meet the right people, land a job, or at least get closer to her goal of becoming a model. It was supposed to be a celebration, a chance to step out of her comfort zone and into something exciting. But instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare no one could have predicted. So let me ask you this. Have you ever taken a trip hoping it would lead to something amazing? Maybe you went somewhere new, met new people, or tried something different. What did it feel like to leave behind everything familiar for the possibility of something better? That's exactly what Felicia did. She left behind the sunny beaches of San Diego, her family, and everything she knew, all for the chance to chase her dreams. Can you imagine how hopeful she must have felt as she boarded that plane to Houston? I can almost picture her sitting there, looking out the window, thinking about all the possibilities ahead of her. But we all know now that those possibilities turned into questions that still haunt her family today. Here's the thing about Felicia. She wasn't just chasing a career. She was chasing a version of herself she hadn't fully become yet. She wanted to show the world, and maybe even herself, that she was capable of greatness. Family meant everything to her. They weren't just her support system, they were her foundation. Her mom, her dad, her siblings. They were the ones who kept her grounded when life got overwhelming. So, when she left for Houston, I'm sure she carried a piece of them with her. Maybe she even promised to call or send pictures or tell them all about her adventures. Little did anyone know those calls would never come. Why does this matter? Because Felicia's story isn't just about her disappearance. It's about who she was before that night. It's about the dreams she dared to dream and the people who loved her deeply. It's about understanding why someone like her, with so much going for her, ended up in a situation no one should ever have to face. When you hear her story, don't just think of her as a name or a headline. Think of her as a person, a real, living, breathing person who laughed, dreamed, and hoped just like you and me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this part of the story. What stands out to you about Felicia? Do you relate to her desire to chase her dreams, even if it means leaving your comfort zone? Or maybe you've been in a similar situation where you took a leap of faith, hoping for the best. Whatever your perspective, I'll be in the comments to respond to your views. This is a conversation, not just a story. Together, we can try to understand what Felicia might have been feeling as she embarked on this journey, and why her loss feels so profound to those who loved her. Houston, Texas, a city known for its sprawling energy, vibrant culture, and a mix of big city opportunities with a touch of southern charm. It's the kind of place where dreams can take flight, or where they can be tragically cut short. For Felicia Johnson, Houston was supposed to be the backdrop of new beginnings. But instead, it became the stage for one of the most haunting true crime stories in recent memory. Let's talk about this city for a moment, because it plays such a pivotal role in Felicia's story. Houston is massive. Over 600 square miles of neighborhoods, highways, parks, and hidden corners. It's diverse, bustling, and full of life, but like any large urban center, it has its shadows. Crime rates here are higher than the national average, especially when it comes to violent crimes. And yet, no one could have predicted what would happen to Felicia during her visit. Felicia arrived in Houston on April 13, 2022. She came from San Diego, California, a place known for sunshine, beaches, and laid-back vibes. But Houston, this was different. It was bigger, busier, and maybe even a little intimidating at first glance. Still, Felicia wasn't afraid. She had come here to celebrate her 24th birthday and explore opportunities to kickstart her modeling career. She was hopeful, determined, and ready to chase her dreams. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever been to a new city for the first time? Think about how it feels. Exciting, yes, but also overwhelming. Everything is unfamiliar. The streets, the people, the rhythm of daily life. Now, imagine being in that position while trying to make important decisions about your future. That's exactly where Felicia found herself. On April 15, 2 days after arriving, Felicia decided to visit CoverGirl's nightclub. Why? Because she thought it might be her chance to get her foot in the door, to land a job that could help her break into the modeling world. But things didn't go as planned. When she got there, she applied for a position, only to be rejected. We don't know all the details of what happened inside that club. Did someone speak to her? Was she dismissed outright? Or did something else entirely occur? The management later claimed they weren't sure if she'd even been there that night. Imagine the frustration of not knowing whether the last place someone was seen holds any answers at all. After leaving the club, Felicia returned to her hotel. By now it was late, and she must have felt disappointed. Maybe she replayed the day in her mind, wondering what she could have done differently. But despite the setback, she probably still held on to hope. After all, she'd only just started her journey in Houston. There would be other chances, right? And then came the decision that changed everything. Felicia called an Uber to take her somewhere, perhaps back to her hotel or to another location altogether. But when the Uber ran late, she made a choice that haunts this case to this day. She got into another man's car. Why did she do it? Was she feeling pressured by time? Did the driver seem trustworthy? Or was she simply too tired to wait any longer? These are questions we may never fully answer. What we do know is that once Felicia stepped into that car, she vanished. Just like that. No calls, no texts, no social media updates. Nothing. Her family back in San Diego waited for news, but silence greeted them instead. Days turned into nights, and the fear began to set in. Something was terribly wrong. Now, let me ask you this. How often do you trust strangers without thinking twice? Whether it's hopping into an Uber, accepting a ride from a friend of a friend, or even chatting with someone online, we make these kinds of decisions every day. But what happens when those split-second choices lead to danger? What if Felicia's story makes us rethink the risks we take without realizing it? The mystery deepens when you consider the timeline of events. Investigators pieced together her movements using Uber records, Snapchat messages, and bank transactions. They discovered that Felicia had communicated with a man named Chukwuk Wo, who requested the Uber ride for her. He picked her up from an apartment complex on Windchase Boulevard, a location tied to his past, before taking her to his current residence on South Richmond Avenue. From there, the trail goes cold. So many unanswered questions remain. What happened after she left the hotel? Where did that car take her? And why did she end up in Bear Creek Park, where her blood-stained phone was eventually found? Every detail raises more questions than answers, pulling us deeper into the mystery. I want to hear your thoughts on this part of the story. What stands out to you about Felicia's time in Houston? Do you think the city itself played a role in what happened to her? Or do you believe this could have unfolded anywhere? Whatever your perspective, I'll be in the comments to respond to your views. Let's keep the conversation going because together, we might uncover insights that bring us closer to understanding what really happened that night. When it comes to solving a case like Felicia Johnson's, the investigation process is everything. It's the difference between finding answers and being left with nothing but questions. But here's the thing. How law enforcement handled this case has been just as puzzling as the crime itself. Let's break it down step by step, because every detail matters when you're trying to piece together what happened to someone who vanished without a trace. At first, it seemed like just another missing person case. Felicia's family, desperate for answers, hired a private investigator to help find her. And that's when things took a dark turn. The investigator discovered something chilling. Felicia's phone, abandoned near Bear Creek Park, covered in blood. Can you imagine what went through their minds when they saw that? A phone isn't just an object. It's a lifeline. Finding it like that wasn't just alarming. It was a red flag, screaming that something terrible had happened. The discovery changed everything. What started as a search for a missing woman quickly turned into a homicide investigation. But let's pause here for a second. Think about this. How often do cases shift so dramatically based on one piece of evidence? For Felicia's family, it must have felt like the ground was crumbling beneath them. They'd already been living in fear, not knowing where she was or if she was safe. Now they were facing the horrifying reality that she might never come home alive. And yet, even with this grim discovery, the questions kept piling up. Who left the phone there? Why? Was it meant to throw investigators off track, or was it simply discarded in panic? These are the kinds of details that keep you awake at night. As the investigation unfolded, more pieces of the puzzle began to surface. Investigators traced Felicia's movements using Uber records, which painted a clearer picture of her last known whereabouts. Her ride didn't just take her to one location. It led her to multiple places. First, she was taken to Windchase Boulevard, an apartment complex linked to Chukwuka Wudo, the man now suspected of her murder. From there, he allegedly picked her up and drove her to his current residence on South Richmond Avenue. Each stop along the way felt like another breadcrumb, leading deeper into the mystery. But here's the question that keeps lingering. Why did she end up in these places? What happened during those rides that no one may ever fully understand? Then came the digital trail. Snapchat messages confirmed contact between Felicia and Wudo, showing that they had communicated before she disappeared. But what exactly did they talk about? Was it casual conversation? Or was there something more sinister going on? Investigators also uncovered bank withdrawal data. A $500 transaction from Wudo's account. At first glance, it might seem insignificant, but in the context of this case, it raises all sorts of questions. Was this payment related to the escort Felicia had posted online? Or was it part of some other arrangement? Again, we don't know for sure, but every clue adds another layer to the story. And then there are the truly disturbing discoveries, the kind that make your skin crawl. When authorities searched Wudo's devices, they found internet searches that read like a checklist for covering up a crime. Phrases like how to be a serial killer, how to destroy DNA evidence, and most forested part of Houston were among the queries. Imagine typing those words into a search engine. What goes through someone's mind when they're looking up information like that? It wasn't just idle curiosity. It was calculated, deliberate, and deeply unsettling. Then there were the purchases: trash bags, gloves, a mechanical saw, tools, and a shovel. Put those items together, and it paints a horrifying picture. This wasn't random or impulsive. It was premeditated. Someone planned this, and that realization is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The final nail in the coffin, so to speak, came when investigators found blood traces matching Felicia's DNA in Wudo's apartment and car. That's not circumstantial evidence. That's direct proof linking him to her disappearance. And yet, despite all of this mounting evidence, Wudo wasn't arrested immediately. In fact, he was questioned, released, and remains at large to this day. How does that happen? How does that happen? How does someone accused of such a horrific crime walk free while a family waits for justice? It's a question that doesn't just haunt Felicia's loved ones, it haunts everyone who hears this story. So, let me ask you this. What do you think about how the investigation was handled? Do you believe the authorities moved quickly enough, or do you feel like critical opportunities were missed? What would you have done differently if you were in charge of the case? These aren't just hypothetical questions. They're real issues that deserve attention. I'll be in the comments to hear your thoughts, because this isn't just Felicia's story. It's ours too. Together, we can try to make sense of what happened and push for the justice she deserves. One thing is clear. Chukwuka Wudo isn't just a name. He's a suspect in a case that has shaken a community to its core. His actions, his searches, his purchases, they all point to someone who knew exactly what he was doing. But why? What drove him to commit such a heinous act? And where is he now? Is he watching videos like this, thinking he's gotten away with it? Or is he hiding somewhere, waiting for the next move? These are the kinds of questions that keep us searching for answers, not just for Felicia, but for everyone affected by crimes like this. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. This is heavy stuff, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. But remember, staying informed and engaged is how we honor victims like Felicia. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm here to listen and respond. Let's keep the conversation going because justice starts with awareness. As the investigation into Felicia Johnson's disappearance unfolded, it revealed details so shocking, so deeply disturbing, that they leave you questioning how someone could be capable of such evil. This isn't just a story about a missing person anymore. It's a descent into darkness, one that forces us to confront the worst parts of humanity. And trust me, what investigators uncovered will stay with you long after you hear it. Let's start with Chukwuka Wudo, the man at the center of this nightmare. On the surface, he might have seemed like an ordinary guy, but digging into his past revealed something far more sinister. Wudo had a prior sexual assault charge against him, a red flag that should have raised alarms. But here's the thing, the victim in that case never pressed charges. Why? Was she scared? Pressured? Or maybe she just wanted to move on and forget the whole ordeal. We'll never know for sure. What we do know is that this wasn't just a random act. It was a pattern, a glimpse into the kind of person Wudo might truly be. And now, years later, that same man is accused of taking Felicia's life. Doesn't that send chills down your spine? How many other victims might there be out there, suffering in silence because they were too afraid to come forward? But the revelations didn't stop there. Fast forward nearly a year after Felicia vanished, and the unimaginable happened. On February 7, 2023, human remains were discovered in Sam Houston National Forest. It was a grim discovery, one that confirmed the family's worst fears. Those remains belonged to Felicia. Her body had been dismembered, cut apart, piece by piece. Can you even begin to imagine what that must have been like for her family to hear? For months, they'd held on to hope, clinging to the possibility that she might still be alive somewhere. But this news shattered that hope completely. It wasn't just confirmation that she was gone. It was proof of the horrific way she had died. And then there's the forest itself. Sam Houston National Forest is vast, dense with trees and hidden secrets. Wild animals roam freely there, and investigators believe some of Felicia's remains may have been scattered by them. Think about that for a moment. Not only was her body discarded like it meant nothing, but nature itself may have played a role in erasing the evidence. It's almost as if the earth tried to swallow her whole, leaving behind only fragments of the vibrant, hopeful woman she once was. How does a family grieve when they can't even lay their loved one to rest fully? That's the reality Felicia's family is facing, and it's heartbreaking. But perhaps the most chilling discovery came from Wudo's own phone. When investigators seized it during their search, they found images that no one should ever have to see. There was a photo of a dismembered woman, one who looked eerily similar to Felicia, and it didn't stop there. There were additional images of deceased individuals, though their identities remain unknown. Who are these people? Are they victims too? Or are they part of some twisted fascination Wudo had with death? These aren't just pictures. They're trophies, souvenirs of crimes that may go far beyond Felicia's case. The thought of it makes your stomach turn, doesn't it? What kind of person takes photos like that? What kind of mind finds satisfaction in documenting such horrors? These discoveries paint a picture of someone who didn't just commit a crime of opportunity. He planned it, he thought about it, he researched it. Remember those internet searches we talked about earlier? How to be a serial killer, how to destroy DNA evidence, most forested part of Houston. They weren't random clicks. They were deliberate actions, steps in a horrifying playbook. And now, with these images on his phone, it's hard not to wonder. Was Felicia his first victim? Or was she just one in a string of crimes that we haven't uncovered yet? Here's the question I want you to sit with for a moment. What drives someone to this level of depravity? Is it power, control, a complete lack of empathy for human life? Whatever it is, it's terrifying. And the fact that Wudo is still out there, free to potentially harm others, is a reality that keeps Felicia's family and everyone following this case up at night. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this part of the story. What stood out to you the most? Was it the discovery of Felicia's remains? The images on Wudo's phone? Or maybe it's the idea that there could be more victims out there, waiting to be found? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. I'll be there to respond and keep the conversation going, because this isn't just Felicia's story, it's ours too. Together, we can make sure her voice is heard and her memory honored. This case isn't just about justice for Felicia. It's about ensuring that no one else has to endure what her family has gone through. So what do you think needs to happen next? How can we push for answers, for accountability, for closure? Let's talk about it. The case of Felicia Johnson is far from over, and the man accused of her murder, Chukwuka Wudo, is still out there. Despite being charged with murder and tampering with evidence, Wudo remains at large, a free man while justice hangs in limbo. How does that even happen? How can someone accused of such a horrific crime just vanish into thin air? It's a question that haunts not only Felicia's family, but everyone who has followed this story. Authorities believe Wudo may have fled the country, possibly to Nigeria, where he could be hiding in plain sight. They think he might have changed his identity, blending into a small village or community, living quietly without drawing attention to himself. Imagine that. A man accused of taking an innocent life, walking around somewhere, maybe even watching videos like this one, knowing he hasn't been caught yet. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? And it raises another question. Why wasn't he stopped sooner? Why was he released after questioning, despite all the evidence pointing to him? But here's the thing. This isn't just about Wudo anymore. This is about Felicia. Her family continues to demand answers, accountability, and justice. They refuse to let her memory fade into silence. Every day that Wudo stays free feels like a slap in the face to them, doesn't it? To Felicia's father, Kelvin Johnson, every sunrise brings fresh pain because the person responsible for his daughter's death is still out there. He's vowed not to stop searching until Wudo is found and brought to trial. Justice will be served, he says. Those aren't just words. They're a promise. And it's not just Felicia's family fighting for justice. The entire community stands with them. People are outraged, frustrated, and scared. If something like this can happen to Felicia, it can happen to anyone. That's why authorities are urging the public to help. A $5,000 reward is being offered for information leading to Wudo's arrest. $5,000. That's how badly they want him found. But honestly, no amount of money can measure the value of bringing closure to Felicia's family. So, what can you do? What role can we play in ensuring that justice is served? Maybe you've seen someone who matches Wudo's description. Maybe you know something, or someone, who might have information about his whereabouts. Or maybe you simply want to share this story so that more eyes and ears are on the lookout. Whatever it is, your contribution matters. Because the truth is, cases like these don't get solved by police work alone. They rely on communities coming together, sharing information, and refusing to let evil win. Let me ask you this. When you hear stories like Felicia's, how does it make you feel? Does it make you angry, sad, scared, hopeful that justice will prevail? Whatever emotions it stirs up, channel those feelings into action. Share this video. Talk about it with friends and family. Keep Felicia's name alive. And if you have the information, no matter how small, it could be the key to solving this case. You never know whose life you might save by speaking up. I'll be honest with you. This part of the story hits hard. It's frustrating, infuriating even, to know that someone like Wudo is still out there, potentially planning his next move? Is he aware of the manhunt? Is he watching this very moment, thinking he's untouchable? We can't let him win. Felicia deserves better than that. Her family deserves better than that. We deserve better than that. If you're tuning in right now, take a moment to reflect on what you've heard. What would you say to Felicia's family if you could? What message would you send to Voodoo? Let me know in the comments. I'll be there to respond and keep the conversation going. Together, we can push for justice, raise awareness, and ensure that Felicia's story doesn't end here. Because here's the bottom line. Justice delayed is justice denied. And Felicia Johnson deserves nothing less than full accountability for what happened to her. So, what are you going to do today to help bring her killer to justice? This case isn't just about Felicia Johnson. It's about so much more. It's about the broader issues that this tragedy highlights, issues we can no longer afford to ignore. Violence against women, especially women of color, remains a devastating reality in our society. How many times have we heard stories like this? Young black women go missing and their cases don't always get the attention they deserve. Why is that? Is it because their voices are too often silenced? Or because society has failed to see them as equally valuable? These are hard questions, but they're questions we need to keep asking if we want to create real change. Then there's the systemic failures, the missed opportunities, the delays, the gaps in how missing persons cases are handled. Imagine being Felicia's family, waiting day after day for answers while the clock ticks away. Imagine knowing that every moment counts, yet feeling like the system isn't moving fast enough to save your loved one. What does that say about where we are as a community, as a country? We owe it to victims like Felicia and to their families to do better, to demand better, because no one should have to endure what her family has gone through. And let's talk about vulnerability for a moment. Felicia was young, full of dreams and ready to take on the world. She wasn't reckless. She was hopeful. She trusted that the world would meet her halfway. But instead, she became another statistic, another name in a long list of lives cut tragically short. That's not okay. It's not okay that someone could prey on her vulnerability. It's not okay that her life was taken in such a brutal way. And it's definitely not okay that the man accused of her murder is still out there, free to potentially harm others. So, what can we do? How can we honor Felicia's memory and ensure that justice is served, not just for her, but for everyone who deserves to live without fear? Start by staying informed. Share this video with your friends, your family, your community. Talk about Felicia's story. Keep her name alive. The more people who know about her case, the harder it becomes for the truth to be ignored. I also want to hear from you. What stood out to you most about Felicia's story? Was it her determination to chase her dreams, the shocking details of her disappearance? Or maybe it's the fact that her family is still fighting for justice, even after everything they've been through? Whatever it is, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going, because awareness is the first step toward change. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Like this video if you found it impactful, and share it with anyone who might help spread awareness. Together, we can make sure Felicia's story reaches the widest audience possible, and that her killer is held accountable. Finally, I want to leave you with this. Our hearts go out to Felicia's family. To her father, Kelvin, who hasn't stopped searching for answers. To her mother, Lee, and her siblings, who wake up every day carrying the weight of her absence. You are not alone. We stand with you. And we will continue to fight alongside you until justice is served. Let's work together to ensure that Felicia's legacy isn't defined by her tragic death, but by the hope, strength, and resilience she inspired in all of us. Before we wrap this up, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to watch this video. Your support means everything to us, and it's what keeps this channel going. True crime isn't just about telling stories. It's about shining a light on injustices, honoring victims, and demanding accountability. And that's exactly what we aim to do here. If you thought this case was shocking, wait until you hear our next story. Trust me, it's one you won't forget anytime soon. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Hit that notification bell and join us as we continue to explore the untold stories behind some of the most harrowing crimes around the globe. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, justice starts with awareness. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. See you soon.